Sworup, Hindus have narratives too, not just Buddhists?
Yes.
Okay.
So, very interesting narratives, I think, in very long books. I mean, you obviously have the Itihasas, which are already pretty long. I mean, they're some of the longest epics in the world.
Yeah.
The Mahabharata and the Ramayana. And I guess more or less people are familiar with most of the narratives found in the Mahabharata and the Ramayana because you have a lot of good TV shows. Pretty old TV shows. They're very nice. A lot of people grew up watching them in Nepal and India, I think. And
also the Amar Chitra Katha comics.
Chitra Katha
They're
comics,
really good, yeah.
exactly. So you have these narratives that are coming up as Itihasa or what has happened or history essentially. And then you have another category of texts that have a lot of narrative in them called the Puranas, right? And the Puranas, there are 18 official, by the official list, you have the 18 Mahapuranas, and then you have the, smaller Puranas. And they have specific characteristics. So each Purana has to fulfill, let's say, a certain characteristic. And these characteristics are listed down in most of the Puranas, actually. So most of the Puranas list down all the categories that a Purana must fulfill.
Okay.
Right? And so you have ideas of Shrishti, so how the universe came into being. So that's an essential part of the Purana.
Okay.
And you're supposed to have the sort of pralaya or the ending of the universe. So it goes up and down. You're supposed to have narrative of kings and of descendants and so on. Okay. So that's an essential part. Many of the Puranas will describe kirtan or stories or sort of devotional stories to the Hari or whichever deity it is. They have ritual prescriptions as well. They have sometimes a cosmological sort of geographical representations, and essentially, the Puranas are, literally etymologically, they're supposed to mean, literally, if I were to translate it to a modern language, just old happenings, so old stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Ancient stuff. So many of the Puranas will have, the central stories that everybody is kind of familiar with regards to, let's say, the Krishna stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam with all the gopis and his happenings with Kamsa, what happens after the Mahabharata and before the Mahabharata. So you have in the Puranas the Itihasas incorporated as well. And so it'll kind of begin by just assuming that you know these characters already many times. You already know who Parikshit is. You already know who Rama is. You already know who Krishna is.
This is A.K. Ramanujan's famous point in one of his articles. No one in South Asia ever learns who Rama is.
Yeah, exactly.
People come out of the womb knowing who Rama is. It's ubiquitous. Yeah.
So it's an assumption in the Puranas, and then sometimes they talk about what happened before the Itihasas actually happened, right? So you can have stories of how the actual Ramayana took place and how sort of who were the ancestors of Rama and from the solar dynasty. And so sometimes it traces it all the way back. And like in the Mahabharata too, you get the initial half being this trace, right? But then the Puranas will sometimes go all the way back to like Manu or the first being that existed, Brahma, and so on. So you usually have all these stories. The stories of Daksha's Yagya is a very famous one where Sati's father Daksha forgets to invite or purposefully doesn't invite Shiva, and then so his sacrifice gets raised because Uma or Sati throws herself onto the pyre. So you get these stories very commonly, and it's usually it's very interesting how Hindu narratives are framed, because we talked a little bit about how Buddhist narratives were framed as let's say a disciple of the Buddha saying, okay, I have heard thus and thus that happened, and therefore this is what happened. Or like you said in the Dhammapada Katha, where it's usually like a commentary where maybe you get a situation in the present, and the Buddha talks about something that happened in the past to explain that situation, or to sort of give a more flavor or more depth. So it's usually the same sort of motif, the second one in the Puranas, where it's formed as a sort of something in the present is happening, and we are explained how everything led up to that point. Right?
And who knows that information?
And mostly it's the rishi. So it's usually a rishi who is talking. It could be Sanaka Rishi. It could be in the Markandeya Purana. It's Markandeya who's speaking. It really depends on the Purana. But it's usually a rishi. And sometimes the rishis are talking to other rishis. Sometimes the stories talk about how the rishi told a king or somebody was in distress and they wanted sort of advice from a rishi. A king wants advice. So in the Markandeya Purana, it's a king who comes to ask for advice, and a family householder who comes to advice to Markandeya, and he relates many of these stories. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's usually the rishis sort of gathering, and then there's one rishi who's giving a talk, basically, or a story narrative thing. What's also interesting is there are always layers. So you always start out from the widest sort of narrative. So let's say the rishis are talking in the forest, right?
Okay.
And then within that, there's somebody else reciting the story, maybe. Okay. And then within that, there's somebody who actually witnesses the story happening. So it's usually like this, almost a Russian doll kind of narrative storytelling. And it's very famous in the Mahabharata as well, where you could have, Vyasa who is narrating this to Ganesha. And then within that, you could have, Vyasa is, again, a person in the story as well. So it has to be kind of told by somebody outside. So... And then
like Krishna and Arjuna are on the battlefield, and it's being telepathically communicated to Duryodhana.
So you have these sort of narrative inside narrative traditions, right? And this is almost what the Puranas are as well. You get narrative inside narrative. With the most famous stories, I think the one that maybe that's relevant to Nepal, I would say, and that would interest a lot of people in Nepal is from the Markandeya Purana.
Okay.
So you have Markandeya, the rishi, the sage. So he's telling this king and this sort of householder who are in distress, the story of the Devi, and that section is usually called the Devi Mahatmyam. And that's the story of Dashai, the festival of Dashai, essentially, and why the festival of Dashai is celebrated. And it's more of a large festivity in Nepal, areas around Bengal, right? Hindus in Bangladesh are very sort of close to this story and so on. So I'll just give you the Devi Mahatmya section.
Okay.
Because the Markandeya Purana is huge. Most Puranas are huge, because they talk about everything, literally. That's the scope, morality, cosmology, the beginning of everything, the end of everything.
Everything you need.
Yeah, everything you need, basically. So the Devi Mahatmyam, the core part of it begins with Vishnu, right? So Vishnu, Narayana, is lying on the cosmic ocean, right? Okay. He's on his... Seshanaga who was coiled up, and he's sort of sleeping, and you get the immediate idea of creation, where creation is an act where Vishnu goes into nidra or sleep, essentially, right? And so there's Yogamaya, Vishnu's Shakti, let's say, wife, who is the one to put the veil of Maya and put Vishnu to sleep, so that creation actually begins. So you already get this cosmological feel already in the narrative, where the narrative begins with, Vishnu's eyes being closed, and he goes into Yoga Nidra, and that's when you get the classical story of a lotus sprouting from his navel, right? And then there's Prajapati or Brahma seated on the navel, and he's the creator. So then he creates the material universe and so on. So already you get a cosmological aspect. So Vishnu is lying on Sheshanaga. He's fallen into cosmic sleep. There's Brahma sprouting out from the lotus, and so he's starting to do his stuff. But then what happens is, from the earwax of Vishnu, right? This is very interesting. These two demons come out.
Okay.
Right. And these two demons come out, Madhu and Kaitava.
Okay.
These are the two demons. They come out from Vishnu's earwax while he's sleeping. And Vishnu is sleeping. And so these two demons say, okay, you know what? We're going to kill Brahma.
Okay.
Right. So they really want to kill Brahma. So these two demons. And then they start climbing the lotus. Right. And Brahma is seeing that these two demons are coming to kill him and trying to kill. And then, so Vishnu is in Yoga Nidra. And so Vishnu is in Yoga Nidra, and he's fallen asleep. So Brahma does the next logical thing, and he calls somebody who actually has woken up or is awake, and that's his Shakti, Yogamaya, right? And he says, he prays to the goddess, "Oh goddess, please save me," and so on. And then he prays very, very deeply to the goddess, and then the goddess she lets go of the veil of Maya on Vishnu, right? And then Vishnu wakes up, and then seeing these two demons trying to kill Brahma, he kills these two demons by placing him on his lap with his chakra, and then he kills these demons, and now Brahma is saved, and so on. So already you get the idea that it's Shakti that's enabling the saving of people. So typically you get the idea that you have the avatars of Vishnu and so on, but what's enabling that is usually the Shakti, the potency, the power, the energy that's supposed to be inside. So because the Narayana without his Shakti is essentially Jada. He's like a jar or something without activity. So already you get this idea. And so Madhu and Kaitava are killed, and so that's what happens. Now, that sort of lays the initial framework of a war between the goddess and demons. And then these asuras, or these demons, they keep coming back. Okay? So in sort of the story cuts off to talking about these two other demons, right? And then there's always, what happens essentially is the asuras and the devas are always in war. Okay. They're in war in Buddhism also, and but then there's a peace treaty kind of when the Buddha is there, and but then you get this idea that the asuras and the devas are always at war, and sometimes one is victorious over the other, sometimes the other is victorious. And so typically how it's framed is these asuras are jealous because they are made up of the Raja Tattva, right? So it's a passionate, it's a needy, it's a desire sort of Tattva, which for example the devas are made of Sattva, which is all harmonious and so on. So what happens is that there's a war. There's a demon that has come out. His name is Mahishasura, right? Mahishasura, the buffalo-headed demon, right? Mahish meaning buffalo and so on. And he is basically got a lot of power, and he's gone to war against the devas, and all the devas have been kicked out of their heaven, the heaven of the 33, right?
Who are these devas, by the way?
So these devas are Indra, Yama, Agni, right? So your standard sort of demigods, as many would maybe refer to them as, instead of being like gods.
Not Vishnu.
Not Vishnu, and so on. So you have these demigods, and then they all sort of get kicked out of their heaven, and they're suffering. They're wandering about homeless, essentially, and they go to the actual devas, right? So what has happened is Mahishasura has taken over the heaven of the 33, and the devas, they go to Brahma, and then Brahma sort of says, you know what, let's put this in front of all the gods. And so now what happens is all the gods, in order to sort of restore balance, because the Raja Tattva or the Asuras have sort of disrupted this power balance. So what they do is they concentrate all their powers. So there's almost like a light emitting from all the devas, and it concentrates into this one point, and from that point arises Ambika, or the great goddess. right? So there's already an idea that somehow these devas are giving sort of some of their power or their shakti, and they're giving that, and then they're concentrating that into this one woman, whose name is Ambika, and so it says, it gives an account of how she was made, essentially, right? So the energy of Shiva, sort of the Shakti of Shiva, creates Ambika's face, for example, right? And then the brightness of Yama makes her hair. And sort of her arms were formed by Vishnu's Shakti, and her breasts were formed by the moon, and so on. So you get this entire description of how she's physically made by the Shakti of these various devas. And all these devas, they bow down to her because she's the essence of all of them almost, right? They bow down to her, and then they give her their own Shaktis, as in their weapons.
Their weapons. Okay.
Right. So Shakti plays like a dual role of energy, potency also, but also whatever weapon that they use. And weapon is a metaphor for activity, right? So Vishnu gives her his chakra, and then the Trishula from Shiva, and Indra gives his Vajra. So all of these devas, they give these various weapons, and that's what she's holding. So when you see the Devi with all these weapons were actually gifted or given by the devas to Ambika.
So this is in a big way poetry.
Yeah.
It's evocative language, it's visual, it's beautiful. There's breasts being formed from the moon, which is pretty ubiquitous across Sanskrit poetry. There's puns on Shakti.
Yeah. So she gets all these weapons from all the deities, and she now she gives a big roar. Okay, so
that's how you know she's serious.
Yeah, you know she's serious.
It's going down.
She gives a big roar, and Mahishasura is somewhere else, but he's very far away, but he hears this roar. Okay, so he knows that there's a contender. There's another sort of beast in the house almost, right?
Do we get to know why Mahishasura is so powerful that all the gods need to make this Ambika lady
So largely it's the fruits of his karma and his penance, essentially. And then Mahishasura, the first time he feels a little bit of fear in him, because he's Lord of the three worlds. He's conquered all the devas. He's like, nobody can beat me. He has pride, essentially. And this is the big thing, is pride that Mahishasura has. That's his sin, almost, that Mahishasura has.
In some way, that's why he's a buffalo. He has that sort of like way about him.
Yeah, way about him. And then he's just strutting around. And So now what happens is Mahishasura sees Ambika, and he's the lord of the Asuras. And like all sort of good, let's say, bad guys, he sends his little people first to attack her. So he sends the legion of demons that he has under him, the Rakshasas and the demons that he has under him, to attack Ambika, essentially, right? And Ambika just brushes these demons. No problem, There's very elaborate poetry on sort of the light being dimmed by the arrows that she rains down on the Asuras, and how her lion that she has, how that roars and it sort of stuns them, and it acts as it attacks these Asuras also, and she throws all these weapons, and there's a very long, elaborate talk about how the fighting actually happens. Right, so that's a central part of the Devi Mahatmya story is the killing of many of these demons just flawlessly, almost as if they're nothing, right? And then what happens is, so all these little guys get on. So Mahishasura is like, you know what? I need to pull out some of the big guns, So he sends another big guy, one of his elite Asuras by the name of Chikchura, who is the general of the army. And he goes attack with his little army people, and no problem, She starts killing them, and Mahishasura, seeing that these people are being killed so sort of easily, he takes or he orders his army to be in the form of mahishas or animals or cattle. So the demons are then sort of transform themselves into the form of cattle, and with their horns and their tail whipping around and so on. That's how they proceed to attack, basically, right? And so there's a very sort of an animal vibe to it, and you see it in the Dasai story. That is why these animals are sort of sacrificed during Dasai, is because they are sort of they're enacting almost the killing of the animal type asuras. And what happens is they're all killed. The general is killed as well. The buffalo type gunners are killed. And Mahishasura, now he takes on his really big bull form. Okay. So now he's become this huge bull. It says he speedily turned about, cracked the earth, and lashed the ocean with his whip of a tail. So his tail is whipping. So it literally, splashes the ocean and so on. And then he proceeds to attack the Devi. And now it says the Devi frequently drinks liquor, so her eyes are red. They're shot with blood almost. She's drunk in this through almost alcohol, right? So she drinks this liquor that makes her invigorated. And then the classic, she beats Mahishasura up, and with her foot on Mahishasura's chest.
This I've seen.
Yeah,
I've seen.
Yeah. So this is a very famous pose, and then she takes her basically spear, and Mahishasura, through almost fear, he starts turning back into the form of the asura. So you'll see frequently half his body will be man, or like man-like. Right, and then half will be buffalo, and that's when she pierces him and kills him, and that is the killing of Mahishasura. And therefore now she's called Mahishasura Mardini, the killer or the vanquisher of Mahishasura. And that's the classic pose you see everywhere in Kathmandu Valley. You go to the Taleju Mandir with statues, you look at any picture of the Devis in general, they're in this pose of killing Mahishasura. So then the devas are, happy. They're all fine. They're like, oh yes, thank you, mother, thank you so much for helping us, and so on. And she says, anybody who wants me or needs me to be their savior, if they only but remember me, I will come to their aid. So that line is very important, because it's kind of bring up the idea of bhakti. Right, so you have to be devoted to the mother, and then she'll come to your rescue. There's almost a maternal aspect to this. It's a child calls for his mother, and the mother appears to save her children. So that's the sort of vibe that the Markandeya Purana is trying to create.
Well, it's interesting for me too, because I'm listening to the story. I spend most of my time with Buddhist stories that are commenting on moral things. I'm looking for the moral here. I'm like, should we not be lying? Should we be kind to others? And the moral really is like, just trust Devi. She knows. She can handle anything.
In essence. So because she is the essence of everything, now the devas go on and say, you are the swaha in all sacrifices. So when you're sacrificing, you say swaha. She's the swaha in the sacrifice, right? She's the source of the world. She's the purest Rig, Yajur, and the Samaveda. She's the essence of everything. She's intelligence. She's the mind itself. She's the Atma. She's everything. So that's how they praise her, right? And a lot of the Devi Mahatmya is this praise of the Devi as the source almost of everything. And sort of she makes this pledge that anybody who's faithful to her keeps her vows and so on. Is faithful to her, she'll come and save like a mother. And then the story continues. It's again, somehow there's two demons appear. The two original Madhu and Kaithaba are reborn as these two other demons, Shumbha and Nishumbha. Okay. Right. And
what does Shumbha mean?
Honestly,
my Sanskrit is failing me here.
Yeah, me too. Sumba and Nisumba are there, and again the story is the same. These asuras are fighting against the devas and so on, and then they get vanquished, so they're out from their heaven, and so they're all sad and everything. And then they go pray to the Devi, and then she comes and assumes this form again to sort of help the devas, because she promised back in the day. And so she comes in her form, right, as Gauri. She starts attacking these demons. These demons send their little ones to attack. Always the little ones get absolutely vanquished by her lion, and so on. And then what happens is that Shumba and Nishumba, when she's fighting the smaller deities, they have these two other babies, almost twin, not babies, not their own babies, but then these baby forms of Madhu and Kaitava, the little ones, but who are very strong still, Chanda and Munda.
Okay.
Right, who sort of they're in pairs essentially, and they're related to Shumba and Nishumba by this paired notion. And Chunda and Munda are seeing these the Devi, killing all their little ones, and they're like, "Wow, she's so beautiful." Right, she's so she has the most amazing sort of radiance about her.
Really moon-like breasts, like the most moon-like.
Yeah. No, literally. They lust after the Devi, and they're like, you know what? My leader Sumba, he should marry her, man. They would make the perfect pair. And
just battlefield thoughts.
And so they go and they tell Nisumba, they're like, you know what? There's this wonderful Ambika woman, she's so beautiful. You should really marry her.
And so help me with names at this point. She's Ambika now. Not Durga,
Ambika Ambika, Gauri, these are all epithets that apply to her.
Okay.
So when she's really in her sort of her whitest form, I'd say she's called Gauri.
Okay.
Right?
Oh,
and then when she gets really angry and sort of she becomes black with anger, then she becomes Kali and so on.
Okay.
So the story sort of builds up on various forms of the Devi. And Sumba is like, you know what? You're probably right. Go and ask her for marriage. I want to marry her. Bring her over to me, bro. And so he sends his little wingman, as in Chanda and Munda. And then they go and they're like, oh, Devi, you're so beautiful, and our Lord, he's the Lord of the three realms. He's so mighty. He's like the perfect match for you,
Maheshwara is dead in a ditch, but now we have this new. Okay.
And then they're like, please come. And she's like, you know what? I don't think so. So she rejects Chanda and Munda. And
girl power.
Yeah,
let's go.
Absolutely. She rejects Chanda and Munda. That's a big hurt to their ego.
Okay.
Right? So they report back to Nisumba actually. And then they're like, you know what? She absolutely doesn't want you, bro. She's, you should kill her, man. Or at least you should, force her to be with you,
Naturally.
Otherwise, what manliness do you have?
Yeah.
Right. And so Sumba, he orders one of his strongest guys, Dhumralochana, smoky-eyed guy, this big giant of an asura, to go and drag Ambika. So this is what he said: we drag her by the hair to me. Who is she to reject me? So this is the kind of almost toxic masculine sort of idea of possessiveness is coming around. And then he goes and then he's like, you know what? I'm going to drag you by your hair if you don't come. And she's like, you can try, and then in the attempt of trying to do that, he gets killed, and very, very poetically by having his hair, being holding him by his hair and chopping his head off.
I mean, this is such a nice counterpoint to like Draupadi in the Mahabharata, where what happens to her, infinite sorry, okay, she's saved, but somehow there's more poetic justice to just cutting the guy's head off. It's much more satisfying narratively.
Much more satisfying. I mean, there's a lot of this dragging the woman by the hair narrative.
Yeah.
So that's what happens, and then so Shumba and Nishumba are angered that they're this strong guy has sort of been killed, and so he sends another guy, Raktabija. Okay, and Raktabija is this demon that is kind of like the Hydra. So if you kill him, then if you kill him and his blood sort of falls and remains, then more of him come back. So that's Raktabija, and at this point, Ambika gets really angry. Right, and then she assumes the form of Kali. She's black with anger, and she assumes the form of Kali, and she kills Raktabija, and more of him appear. And the devas, they sort of just give a hint. Like Raktabija will appear if there's blood. So why don't you just drink it up? And so Kali, when killing Raktabija, sort of drinks his blood, and therefore has a red sort of red tongue and so on. So Raktabija is dead, and now is sort of the bigger battle, right? So Shumba and Nishumba ascend to Chanda and Munda. Now so we are going up the sort of the hierarchy of demons. So Chanda and Munda are gone, and Chanda and Munda get absolutely sort of killed by the Devi as well. So Chanda and Munda are killed by the Devi, and that is why the Devi is called Chamunda, because she's the killer of Chanda and Munda. So that's kind of like you get these name origin stories as well. So she's called Chamunda because she kills Chanda and Munda, and now it's the final two, like it's Sumba and Nisumba. Now there's no more sort of anything going on. And in that war, because Sumba and Nisumba are quite strong, right? The Devi sort of projects all these, the essence of all the other gods out and creates the matrikas. So Vaishnavi, Brahmini, right? So now she basically creates these versions of herself out there. In order to sort of help her with the attack. So there's Vaishnavi, there's Brahmini, there's Indrayani. So all the Shaktis there's Rudrayani. So all the Shaktis of the Devi, they come out.
And they're women? I mean, they have feminine...
All of them are women, yeah. So they're women, and they have the weapons of sort of whatever, god they're related to, and they basically annihilate almost all the army that Shumba.
Girl power. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't know about this part of the story.
And then what happens is by some sort of form, Nishumba, I think, is the one that gets killed first. So Nishumba, the brother, gets killed first. Let me just confirm that. The full space of 100 years. So it's Nishumba that gets Nishumba that gets killed first. And so Nishumba gets killed, and Shumba is now basically alone.
Okay.
And now he sort of plays this guilty sort of, what villains do when they're outnumbered and they're about to die, essentially. It's like, you Devi, you're so unfair. There's all these forms of you that are, killing all these people. And look at me, I'm just alone, right? I'm
just a guy who loves a girl. Yeah, just marry me.
Right. And he said, don't be proud. You have all this support, and you're not fighting alone. I am the one who's fighting alone. Right. And then what Ambika says, now there's a direct relationship between philosophy, is she says, oh, immodest sort of one, do you not understand that I am alone? Who is there in this universe besides me? So there's a cosmological point where she is the essence of everything. And so she withdraws all of the other forms that she has within her, and then she starts fighting Shumba, and then Shumba gets killed, and therefore, peace is retained again, right? So you get a lot of these stories. So again, in the future, the devas will be vanquished by the asuras, and then she will come in the form of, let's say, Brahmari, who is a form of bees, and so on. And so this narrative, this basic narrative, is that there's jealousy that's going to, cause war, right? And then there are going to be people who are oppressed, and so on, etc., etc. And then the Devi will appear to help her bhaktas, to help the oppressed, and so on. So it's really a narrative that pushes the idea of bhakti. And this is a very famous story that spans millions of aeons, essentially. So right now the story seems very short. It's like one of the others, but it spans a large aeons in the original Purana, and it gives sort of this theistic argument for devotion and for having faith in Ambika, or the goddess. And that's the idea of Dashani, essentially. And that's why you get a lot of these smaller ones. You get names. So because she kills the demon Durga, she's called Durga, and so on. There's another etymological thing where she's called Durga because she's difficult to reach, because she's far away.
Durga.
Right? And these stories serve as a way to sort of make the listener understand why the Devi is called certain names, and why sort of you should have faith in her, essentially.
There's the etymological.
Yeah, there's the etymological.
The grammar piece in Sanskrit where you're constantly needing to explain why words are the way they are to sort of get at their power.
So that's kind of the major story from the Devi Mahatmya, which is from the Markandeya Purana. Now, there's a little bit of sort of a narrative shift that I like to bring in, where right now, Nepal is pretty conservative with the idea that you should respect your elders, and even Brahminical sort of texts are pretty strict on you should follow your elders, respect your elders, listen to what they say, etc., etc. And there's this essence that the elders are wiser than sort of the younger ones. But there are many texts where that is not really the case that the narrative is trying to show. Where I take the example of Nachiketa, for example, right? So Nachiketa is the son of this king. Okay.
What story is this?
So this is from the Katha Upanishad. Right. And there's this king called Vajasravasha. Okay. And he's trying to perform this sacrifice. Okay. So he performs this great sacrifice because that's what kings do. They're performing sacrifices. And Nachiketa is this wise young child. And he sees his father, Nachiketa sees his father, when it's time to give gifts to all the Brahmins and so on. He sees him giving these cows that are weak, and they can't eat anymore, they can't give milk anymore, they can't calf anymore, away to these Brahmins. And he says, you should be actually giving your property to these Brahmins that they can use, and because it's not a gift if you're not sort of giving something away that is of value. If you're giving away something that has no value, so I am like one of your property as well, right? So if you're giving, you should be giving what sort of you value the most. And why don't you give me, I'm also a possession. Yeah. The king is like, oh, shut up. And then the Nachiketa pushes this agenda twice more. So he's like, I'm a possession. You should be giving good stuff, blah, 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 blah. And the king is like, shut up. You're small. What do you know about the world? Yeah. And then the third time Nachiketa is like, he says this, and the king gets very furious, and he gets very angry, and he says, you know what? I give you to Yama. So I give you to death itself.
That's a sacrifice.
Raja sacrifice. Exactly. So he gives his son up to Yama, and Nachiketa is gone to Yamalok. Okay. And then he's chilling around Yamalok. He doesn't see anybody. He roams around Yama's palace. And so 3 days he's been roaming around Yama's palace. Nobody sees him. And Yama sees him one day, once he comes back to his palace. He's like, what are you doing here? He's like, bro, I got sent here by my dad. and Yama's like, your time has not occurred, so I was not expecting you. How long have you been here? Nachiketa's like 3 days. Yama's like, oh no, I had a guest over at my house and I didn't take care of him for 3 days.
He didn't get any biscuits. He didn't get any tea.
Nothing. No water. Nothing. So Yama is like, you know what? To make up for it, I'll give you 3 boons.
Okay.
Ask whatever you want.
Okay.
Right? Nachiketa is this wise child. He's like, you know what? My father must be very anxious that I've left him and so on. So, and regretful because in a fit of anger, he gave his son away to death. So may my father's anger and sort of his regret and his anxiety be nullified. Okay.
Thoughtful.
Nice. Very thoughtful.
Nachiketa's still dead, but it's nice that we're spending the first boon on his dad. Yeah.
So forgiveness essentially. That's his first boon. The second boon is he wants to understand the fire sacrifice because that's the primary of all the fire sacrifices. So he's like, why would one do the fire sacrifice? What's the purpose of doing the fire sacrifice, etc., etc. So the second boon, he asks for the fire sacrifice. And the third boon, he asks Yama, you know what? I wish to know the most deepest knowledge that anybody can ever have. I wish to know what the self is, what the Atma is, right? And Yama is like, yo, bro, this is kind of above my pay grade, you know? I mean, I know some stuff, but, you know, this is like deep, deep stuff. Some of this I don't even know. And Nachiketa's like, no, bro, please tell me. This is the boon I ask for. And so Yama goes on this long philosophical discourse about who the Atma is and whether the body is the self. And of course, it's in the negative. The self is this permanent essence of everything that doesn't change and so on, and knowing the self is the only way to liberation, and he goes on this long Upanishadic sort of discourse about what the self is, how you can liberate yourself, and the only way of actually achieving moksha is realizing the Atma, right, and Brahma, and that's how the Upanishad is framed. So you have this narrative part in the beginning, where there's this king and he does this foolish thing where his son is there and so on, and then you get this long discourse of philosophy that follows from narrative, right? And then Nachiketa, after he sort of figures out everything, yes, this long discourse, he achieves moksha actually from that point. And so that's one story where kind of you get the elder being the foolish one, and then the child actually being the wiser, sort of more understanding figure. There's another story that most people are familiar with of Hiranyakashyap and his son Prahlad, where the demon dad, the Asura dad is this who can beat me? There's always pride in the Asuras. It's their guna. And Prahlada is the actual wise one who says, you know what, there's bhakti that you should be following, etc., etc. You should have devotion towards the Lord. You should be a good guy. You should not go around killing people. You should not go around stealing stuff. And his father doesn't like that. You should not be greedy and all of this. And he's like, what would your Vishnu do? And when he tries killing Prahlada a lot of times because he just won't become an atheist Asura, that hates the god Vishnu, and he tries killing, but Prahlada is saved a lot of times because by Vishnu. Okay. Tries killing by elephants, by putting on fire and so on.
And just like you do with your kids, just burn them. They don't listen. They never listen.
And then he gets killed later on. And Prahlada, even though he's an Asura, he's a wise Asura, right? So he's the son of an Asura, but he's very wise. Okay, and again you get this idea that the elder is kind of the ignorant one, and because he didn't listen to the younger one, he's falling into all this trouble.
And then to some extent, we're sort of transcending gunas here. Like he should be an Asura, and in fact, even he can be saved kind of through the power of Vishnu because he has this faith.
And
where's this story from, by the way?
The story of Hiranyakashyap. You see it in the Srimad Bhagavatam, for example.
Okay.
So it's everywhere, essentially. It's the same story, different ways of telling. Last, I think one of the stories is the sage Kapila, who is born to his mother Devahuti. And the whole Sankhya philosophy originates from Kapila, who is the son of Devahuti, right? Who is married to this rishi before she was a princess, right? But then she hears about this rishi, and so she marries him because she respects him so much, and therefore they have a child, Kapila, and this whole thing is expounded. So Sankhya philosophy is expounded as Kapila teaching his mother how everything works. So what the tattvas are, what buddhi is, what ahankara is, what purusha and prakriti are, right? So the entirety of Sankhya philosophy comes from a teaching that Kapila tells his mother.
I guess the sense is that parents are supposed to know about like the material world. Parents can tell you like teach you how to fish or like how to cut vegetables or something, but even kind of parents' wisdom is not enough to know the existence of reality.
So there's almost this insistence in many of the narrative stories where your age isn't really a factor that comes into play with wisdom, right? Because you could listen to your parents regarding many things like Manu orders, right? In the first episode we talked about, but now you get this narrative shift where it's the younger ones you have to look after. So these are the two stories that I wanted to just these two themes that I wanted to talk about. One about bhakti from the Devi Mahatmya, which is closer to the Nepalese sort of audience, I guess, and then this more of a narrative shift that the stories try to bring in, or this concept shift among the people that, age and wisdom are kind of maybe separate things, and you shouldn't they shouldn't be conflated. And this is everywhere in the Hindu narrative, I think. So the Hindu narratives are pretty wide, and they talk about everything, cosmology, everything, morals, bhakti, and that's their essential goal, I think, is to arouse sort of this wonder about stuff and then lead you towards moksha. That's the essential purpose of narrative, I think.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you.